Alright. Hopefully this new audio quality is good for you guys. Got a new mic. Alright. I was waiting to get the new mic to do this shit. Alright. Go to the Word file. Perfect. Led by Tommy Knight, the Triad had gotten themselves into enough trouble that they were being sent to Opportunity School, which shared its building until last year with the YMCA. The Opportunity School was a school where you went if other schools didn't want you, not just because you might be delinquent, but if you had been too much trouble for public schools. His mom subbed there for a while, therefore she got subbed there. Eddie's mom subbed there for a while before she got a job as a piano teacher. Tommy was a big and muscular dude. His dad worked for a fitness joint in town. His hair was hazel brown. His face was good for his conning. His eyes were fiery blue. They always seemed to be blazed with cruel light. Sally and Ajax looked close enough to be brother and sister. Long, feathery black hair, pale green eyes, and olive skin. The only difference was Sally had a burn scar on her neck. Eddie had heard that had happened from setting off fireworks during Cinco de Mayo. The grin on Tommy's face was toothy and cruel. It was a toothy and cruel grin that made Eddie want to run. It was not exactly that he was scared of Tommy. It was more that he was scared of what 3 could do to him in the small hours while his family slept. "Hey, Eddie. Sorry about your nose. It was an honest accident," he said with honeysuckle sympathy. "Get off my porch, Tommy. I don't want any trouble." I tried to get up, but Tommy had pushed me back down. "My dad will be up any minute. He doesn't like trespassers, and someone like you will make him call the cops," I said, half warning, half threatening. "Oh, you're right, Eddie. I left my watch in my other pants. Why don't we take a walk?" With this, as if on cue, Ajax and Sally grabbed me by the shoulders, and Tommy punched me in the mouth. Oof. They walked Eddie along and he knew what they were just going to beat him up. They did this to about every kid in town. It was nothing new to Eddie, but it was a reason to stray away from him. However, he had never heard of them just abducting people before. Eddie knew they were jerks, but that is just psycho. It came to Eddie just as quick as the punch to his jaw. They must have been the ones in his yard last night. He'd bet that they had just gotten used to keeping out of sight. They led him to behind his house and further into the woods. Possibly nobody would hear them wail on him. If there was one thing Eddie knew, it was that Tommy and his gang were full of themselves. Sally and Ajax held him in one arm, and Tommy had his back to us. A grin broke out on his face. They must not know this area. They had just reached a little beyond his backyard, and this told them when Sally cried out and fell in pain. They were in shock. Eddie broke away and started to run. Bit of a diss. Come on, if I ever publish this shit, this will get changed a little bit. They were probably messed up her ankle. He could see that she walked right into a spot where he himself had broken his, and made sure to stay away from. Beyond his backyard was a loose forest which thickened up as you neared the library. About 15 feet away, there was a hole in the ground that was very deep, possibly a gopher hole. He didn't care. He just ran for like his life depended on it. Who knows? Might have. He was running as fast as his legs would carry him, and if his gym teacher saw how fast he was going, he would tear out his remaining hair. He burst back into his backyard. The fire pit in the metal hadn't been used since last Thanksgiving, before the snow had started to fall. He felt hot. He was breaking out in it with heavy beads of sweat. The grass was so slippery that he felt he could slip it if he wasn't careful. Not so far off in the distance, he could hear loud groans agonizing groans of Sally. But he also heard running footsteps. He did not dare look behind him. He knew he was being chased. By the gaining speed of the footsteps, it was Tommy. Eddie was now gasping now, but he managed to get to the back door and turn the knob. He cursed loud enough that if his parents were on the other side of the door, they would ground him. The knob would not budge. It was locked. He heard footsteps fast approaching, and he dodged out of the way just in time for Tommy to crash into the back door. Eddie almost crashed into the grass, but he grabbed onto the window ledge above the sink to stop himself. But it yanked his arm back, pain erupted in his shoulder. He ignored it and continued to run up the front door. The front door will still be unlocked. He turned the corner of the house and saw Tommy coming right at him. Eddie knew he was going to be caught now. He could see the seething anger in every furious wrinkle on Tommy's pimple-free face. Eddie tried to stop in his tracks, even though it would mean certain death. But this caused him to slip in the wet grass as Tommy came right at him. Tommy tipped over Eddie. Tripped over? That's about right. Tripped over Eddie. Eddie used the force of gravity to give power to a punch that he planted right in Tommy's crotch. With Mr. Psycho stunned, Eddie thought he ran into his house and locked the door tight there. His father was looking at him with curious eyes, which turned to worry when he saw the bruised nose and the bleeding lip, and a scared as hell look on his son's face. After Eddie's dad checked around the yard and some of the surrounding woods, mining the hole in the ground where Eddie and Sally broke their ankles, he found no trace of them other than where the acceleration, the escape, and the chase took place. No signs of where they went, even though Sally had been hobbling her way in the arms of her partners in crime. After investigating, Mr. Morris, a teacher of criminology at the University of Aurora, he came in to discuss this with his son. Eddie told what had happened over another cup of coffee. He really had a penchant for caffeinated beverages. His father had listened as if he were listening to the victim of a crime, which this essentially was. When his son finished, he spoke up. Eddie, this needs to be reported, and it will. But I want you to come home as soon as school lets out, as fast as your bike can take you from your writing class. I do not want to talk from experience that when I discuss crime against minors next semester. Okay? That's probably shitty at parent acting, isn't it? Eddie agreed, and he said he would take his bike and use a special lock his parents had gotten from Christmas. It was a special one that came with an app. You just touched your phone to it. Of course, an Apple product, to a pad on the bike to open up the lock. Resistant to lock-picking was on the box of the product. Eddie grabbed his notebook and rode off just as fast as his leg could carry him. Bitch, why hasn't Apple made that product yet? With their fucking Apple Pay, they'd be shooing to fucking make that shit. Or I'm gonna sell that to whoever the current CEO is. It was a crisp morning of early spring. He could tell there had been frost, because if... No shit. The ground was wet with dew, idiot. Because if... His house stood in a weird spot in the downtown area of Oswego. The town sloped on the sides of the Fox River. Downtown was in the commercial district on the east side of town, and the town hall and more residential areas on the west side. He lived just on one side of the park. His house was just next to a small patch of woods that bordered a stream and a winding slope of a bike path that led to the library. After speeding down his driveway, he went up to that slope, minding the train tracks. There had been rumors a kid in his 60s got his tire treads stuck just as a train was coming, and after changing his bike speeds, reached the top of the... Nice. completely forgot to, end where that, local history shit took down, stopped. And after changing his bike speeds, reached the top of the incline. He could see down Main Street and up Jefferson Street, where the library stood. He was about to start back up again, when he thought he heard a twig snap, that awful, snapping sound again, that awful sucking sound again. I'd probably make a sound for that one, but it'd probably end up sounding like the grapefruit technique with my sense of humor. But this time it was much louder. Shut up, Duolingo. I'll deal with you later. Yeah, I'll show that little bird what's up. He wants to kick my ass about the fucking Spanish lessons. I'll kick his. Or theirs. Hold up. The feeling of being watched came to again. As an addict just seeks out their poison. A fix. Or an urge? Yeah, the urge, I guess. The sound came from down the path next to the library, the one that led to the clearing, that even now gave Eddie a case of the chills. Ones this morning would not and could not dream of giving him. He knew he should pedal his way out of here, and fast. But he was held there with a curiosity that could kill him if he wasn't mindful. He could just tell himself all morning and night that it was Tommy and his crew that was watching him, stalking him, making those sucking sounds with something that his dad gave him money to buy. But he would be no more convincing than that of a kid who's just been caught with their hand in the cookie jar. He could place it now, as if a flow of thought in his subconscious started to bloom in his waking mind. The feeling of that chill, cold as ice, biting as a blade. It feels like the description of walking through a spirit, being in a haunted room. He didn't like the thought, and like it or not, it was in his head now. He called out, just as a warning to whoever or whatever was there. Get out, and get the hell away from me, or I'll call the cops on your sorry ass. And he rode away, like lightning, up Jefferson Street, and crossing the street despite not having the signal, almost getting hit with a car because of it, making his way to the YMCA at the speed of a scared deer. His story draft had gotten a B-. The teacher said it could be very good, but that Eddie should try to add more suspense to the chase, and more depth to the delusion. Eddie thanked him in awe of how much better he was getting. He had taken this class twice now. He started with a C, now worked his way into getting a B, even if it was the lower end of the spectrum. His last story to be looked at on draft day. His was the last story to be looked at on draft day. He gives you a prompt to write a poem. You choose the type as he reads and grades the drafts. He reads so fast that he's able to get done with all papers, about 14 all, in a quarter of the class time. It's about an hour. The prompt he gave us was sleep, and we could write any poem we wanted to, as long as it had to do with sleep. Eddie wrote a haiku, his favorite poetry. He wrote this one, just as he was falling asleep. Swimming in neurons, crossing to somewhere else, into the land of Nod. The teacher said he likes that one, as it conveyed powerful imagery about the journey from consciousness into unconsciousness. Eddie was grinning about his grade as he walked outside to his bike, when he notices a note in the basket that hung from the handlebars. He did not recognize the handwriting, but he knew who it was all the same. It was Tommy. And the letter was written in yellow notepad with a red gel ink pen. It read as follows. Hey, you little shit. Could not help but notice that you happened to punch me in the dick. Do not think that you'll get away with that. I don't care if your dad has some strong ties to the PD. And with the help of a new friend of mine, you'll be history. I just try to channel my inner goosebump bully for the shit. Though, for the most part, it's more like Stephen King. He called his dad immediately and told him what was on the note. Then his dad, who made a call to the police department after he left, made another call. Eddie rode home as fast as he could, speeding down the winding cobblestone path where he heard the sucking noises once more, but braking it at the turn so that he did not wipe out. When he walked in the door, his father and mother, his father and a woman in her police officer garb was waiting for him, apparently with some disturbing news. She introduced herself as Ms. Erica Diaz, and then started with this news of hers. She stated that Tommy and his friends had been in a drunk accident that left them in the Rush Hospital last night, all of them out cold. Witnesses said that they ran into Route 34, screaming and bleeding from some cuts they sustained while crashing their bikes in the wetlands nearby, and got hit by a drunk driver who was, thanks to his utter insobriety, so drunk he didn't realize he was riding only at 10 miles per hour instead of 45. They escaped with some minor internal hematomas, scrapes, and a broken ankle sustained by Ollie. If they were in the hospital, with the checking every 4 hours to make sure, checking in every 4 hours, monitors that were not shut off or tampered with are showing them there as well. Then who was beating him up this morning? And what were they going to do with him? To think that they were not in his house was ludicrous. Are you sure, officer? I mean, I saw them right in front of me. They punched me in the nose, the mouth, and that's where she cuts me off. I know what you saw, what happened to you. Of course, things can be tampered with, but the work, things can't tamper. But if so, the work was covered up very nicely. Maybe that was the new friend who did that, whoever they might be. As we speak, we are having background check done on each person on shift last night and this morning, but that takes some time to process. She said this with a tone of reasonable voice. It was as if she was trying to control a situation that was 10 minutes from getting out of hand. Although he was concerned, he was not hysterical. Besides the problem of alibis, the part about the broken ankle struck Eddie between the eyes like a rubber mallet. That was the same part she had broke when Eddie made this escape, or at least that's what had to be what she broke. He didn't like the idea of the new friend either, or that the message was in red ink, which seemed to be rather grim tone. If they caught him outside his house. But then a thought came into his already worried head. What if they don't bother waiting? They just break in? This made him shudder. Eddie, the police officer continued, to either break him out of his thoughts, which must have shown themselves on his face, or to get things rolling. We'll have a car patrolling every 4 hours or so, just until we think the threat passes, and the police officer who normally does the buses? Fuck, I don't even know what I was doing there. We'll pick you up early to take you with him to school so that you can get there without any trouble. But under no circumstances are you to go outside without someone with you. Do you understand? Eddie said he did, and he didn't like all this watching, mainly because he found being watched was creepy. But he found that he could not complain on account of how serious this might be. The officer said goodbye and left the front door. It was Saturday evening. Eddie was finishing homework for the week. It was just one last assignment. The assignment was from his history class. He had to write a short summary of the interim period between World War I and World War II. It was an assignment that Eddie was putting off, partially because he didn't really care for history that much, and because he knew that writing, even nonfiction, was something he found came naturally to him when he started taking his writing classes. He had been putting off an assignment of at least one page about such thing, as amassing weapons, the Holocaust, the invasion of Hitler's. Whilst writing, he was listening to Monty Python. He started off watching the episode with Mr. Hilter, who was planning a trip with a map of Poland. It was funny enough to watch, fuck it, let's skip that shit. Not that important. With the last keystroke of his logging time between 1918 and the September of 1945. It's more than just the interim, I guess, isn't it? His eyelids felt feeling like they were made out of lead. Eddie looked at the clock on his desk and found it was 11:58. He was surprised at the time, but not once did he consider how many breaks he took to read during writing the paper. He looked through the slits in the blinds at the sky and saw there was no moon in the sky, just a sheet of ebon blackness of space, with little glowing dots all over the sky. There was no moon. It was a phase of total darkness outside the window. And he, and the silence of the sleeping once again crept into the room. It was an eerie silence that only appears when one is alone, or among the dead, where it feels as if he's the only living thing in town. He felt very tired. That did not mean much to him. Insomnia visited him as a call girl makes her rounds of the lucrative. He opened the drawer of his desk and found where he kept some of his vitamins and pills. Nothing crazy or pseudoscientific, just fish oil, fiber, magnesium. He starts putting the right doses together for his nightly ritual that he has continued for some time now, since Christmas of last year. He took the medicine, turned out his lights, and got into his covers. He was just falling asleep when he heard that awful noise again, and he was wide awake. He looked into the darkness and saw nothing there. He got out of bed, making his way to the door to see if the patrol car might be outside. If they were sleeping, he would have their head for letting Tommy out of their sight. It brought him down to think that it might not be Tommy making this noise, but that it might be their friend. He made his way from the back of the house, checking every door and lock on his silent, creeping way similar to that of a burglar. Standing at the threshold of the family room, there was a big eight-paned window, windows showing the world their house, the house the world. But at night showed neither due to the blinds. He crept closely to the window, making sure not to make a sound, as he got out onto the couch and stood before the windows. He peered out of them to see if the patrol car was in its hiding place. A surveillance car with one-sided camera lens on the rim of the car and a slightly extended trunk to conceal a cop plus some monitors. That seems so wacky in retrospect. It's like, what the fuck? That's not how that goes, bitch. I think they're popping out this shit for a kid. No fucking way. It was to be a different model each time. Yeah, still more so fucking ludicrous. It was driven by one cop who got out and acted like he was like the decoy, and the other cop would hide in the trunk. Outside, he could see no cars on the side of the street where it was supposed to be parked. This didn't bode well for Eddie. He could feel the painful grip of fear in his heart. The hairs on his neck stood up, and he was only relieved by their attention by the drops of the hairs on his neck stood up and were only relieved by their attention by the drops of perspiration that went down his spine with the flow of gravity. He could see the shapes moving in the darkness. There was no streetlights on this part of the street. There was only one across the small bridge which connected his street to the town of Oswego. But it was broken, and there was not a repairman in sight for years. The shapes were human, and as they came into the yard, Eddie thought he could make out what they were, that they were faces. Hold on. Eddie thought he could make out the faces of his almost successful abductors. One of them was not limping anymore. This is no doubt. Okay, I need to, for me, just. One of them was limping. Sorry. This is what, put no doubt, oh, I get it. Let's just forget I did that. One of them was not limping anymore. This put doubt into him, but something about the way they moved, the feeling of seeing them told him that he was seeing the trio who appeared to him that very morning. They stopped at the midsection of the driveway. He could feel they were staring at him in the eye, despite not being able to see into theirs. At least, not the conscious fact they might be. He grabbed his phone and called Erica's personal number, which she gave him before leaving this morning. Another weird addition. Again, this is more like a retrospective on the work. It's not really a finished one. I just thought the story was interesting. It was comical because she came back 15 minutes later with a piece of croissant in her mouth and the smell of coffee as her perfume, saying that she was intending to give the number, but forgot completely. But there was nothing comical about what he was seeing outside now. It was bone-chilling. He waited for the dial tone and turned to voice, hopefully not a voicemail. Just before the last tone went out, he heard the click of a connection. Eddie, I was just about to call you. What did you need? Eddie, I was just about to call you. What do you need? Oh, sorry, there was just weird figures down at my house. Eddie did not pause. They're all in my front yard now. Tommy, Sally, Ajax. You're standing in my front yard like a bunch of fucking psychos. He was yelling at us in a silent voice because it had not entered his mind to wake his parents at this haunting nightly visit. Eddie, what are you talking about? Tommy's friends are all in front of me. I can see them about to go to the ICU, from ICU to regular rooms. I just got finished questioning them. Eddie was stunned by this. You could not make... that's so fucking odd. He could not make the breath come out of his windpipe, even if a hex was put on him to do so. It was chilling. He went to the door to check the lock on the door, realizing he did not check that lock, and found that it was indeed locked. Good. But the porch light, which was most insensitive, was on. He could hear the crunching of feet on frosted grass, and the light was thrown on to the front yard. He walked back to the couch and peered through the window and gasped. He could hear Erica speaking to him from his phone, but he could no longer hear her. The 3 teens were gone. He raised up the phone to his ear and said, "They're gone. Now, they must have just gone when the light went on. You know, the one in front? Whoever they are, they were giving me the creeps." Eddie said, trying to explain what had happened and calm himself down as well. "But it can't have been them, Eddie. They were right in front of me when you called. And it had to be the friend they were talking about with some of their friends," she explained, trying to rationalize the madness. Something clicked, some of what Eddie said had rung true to the very, something of what she said had rung true to the very core of Eddie's being. That was the friend spoken in the note, but something didn't sit right with Eddie. It seemed like this was not a friend, but a master. A master who is a friend to them, as a captor is to a Stockholm victim. With a thud loud enough for Erica to cry out, the light that was pouring into the room had cut out. Eddie was left in darkness again. He looked out the window again and saw a face was staring into it. And was staring face to face with the figures from outside. They were the trio, all right, but in a hideously, ghastly, filtered version of them. Little sores appeared all over his skin. Their eyes were bloodshot. Their irises was a red blood color. Their hair the hair on their heads. The hair was as pale as bone. To his horror, Eddie saw one of the sores on their mouth open and reveal sharp-toothed mouth, like that of a leech. or vampiric monster. That's what I wrote. Erica was saying that she would get someone over there right away, and to stay on the phone with her. But she knew he wasn't listening anymore. He was staring in silent horror at the transformation that was occurring. He could see one hand, no longer human, reach through the window like it was never there, and grab him by the throat. It pierced his neck with a pain of acidic fire and pulled him through the window into the dark lawn. They found Edgar Eddie Morris 15 minutes later, around the same time that Tommy and his friends died of an unknown cause. Dead from what appeared to be the same cause, sudden and lethal anemia. Light is their enemy, the darkness is their friend. They add more to their ranks, and on that weekend, in the factually waning winter, 4 more joined their ranks. I know that wasn't really, that was about, a little long, like seconds longer. But yeah, that was kind of just the end of it, Tell me what you think about it, because I know it's not really a finished product, it's just, something I thought was fun to read. And kind of a suggestion brought me to reading this, since I don't think I've ever put it on my channel, even as a live writing. Alright. Have a good one.